Oh my gosh.
Oh, it's so good.
Why is it more tender? I don't even know. Several years ago on The King of Random, I tried to make a vacuum fryer and test how it cooked foods. It worked a little bit, but ever since then, I've wanted to remake it better. And today's the day. I'm gonna remake a vacuum fryer. I should back up. What is a vacuum fryer? So, what is a vacuum fryer? It's really not that complicated. So imagine you have a pot and flames underneath it full of oil. You can fry stuff in it, yay! But I think we can do something a little bit better. We add a lid, a couple of ports in it. That's gonna be our vacuum gauge. And this one's gonna be a hose. That hose is gonna connect to some copper pipe. I'm just gonna draw a coil like that. Whee! Whoop. And that's all gonna be in another container. And we've got our coil coming out. We're gonna have another container right here. This one's gonna have a lid on it. This hose is gonna go over to a vacuum pump. So the idea, you're frying over here, this vacuum pump is running. It's pulling air through this hose. This is a sealed container, so it's pulling air down through here. But when you cook the food, steam builds up here. And this was the big problem I ran into last time I tried. So this is going to pull that steam out. This container here with the copper coil is going to be full of ice water around the copper coil. So the steam's gonna go in here, it's gonna condense and then get pulled out and just spill onto the floor of this container. And this one is gonna pull all the air out through this sort of complicated chain. But what that means, we can fry things in this container while it's under low pressure. I'm gonna need some supplies. To the stores. All right, let's start out with our pressure cooker. This is designed for holding positive pressure. We are going to use it for holding negative pressure instead. So this is aluminum, and I have no worries about this holding the negative pressure, the vacuum that we're gonna put in it. It should do that just fine, but we need a way to measure the pressure inside and to pull air out. We gotta put some holes in it. Very first of all, we have to be able to attach the vacuum hose. That's gonna go right there. I need a bigger hole. Great noise. The threads on this and the hole that I just drilled in the lid are both tapered. But I should be able to wrench down on this and the threads will cut a little bit into the slightly softer aluminum, and that'll give some really good hold to really make sure that it's airtight. Pretty good fit. Pretty happy with that. Now I did buy a vacuum gauge. That's gonna go somewhere else in the lid, but I don't have it yet, so I'll cut and fit that in once that arrives. We will do testing on how good of a vacuum I have and whether I need to fix things like the seal around it or this plug right here, which should be a two-way plug, but I don't know how good of a two-way plug. We'll figure that out once I have a vacuum gauge attached to this. In the meantime, we've got next parts to do. Vacuum hose, hose clamp. Perfect combo. Pot over to, oh, maybe about that far away. We can have our cooling area. Aw. I did it, first try. Now this copper tube actually fits quite nicely into the end of this, which means all I'll have to do is add a hose clamp, and we're golden on that. This needs to be a coil. What size of coil? I need a container. We want to get a lot of cooling. I don't want to kink off this hose. Try wrapping it around this. Oh no, so that's what I don't want. It's squishing. The hose kinks if I try and wrap it in as tight of a circle as I need. So I'm going to try filling it with sand to make it so that it can't wrap that tightly. It can't kink because there's sand in the way. I don't know if you can use a syringe to push sand, but I'm about to find out. Kind of like a funnel that you can add pressure to. Deforming the glue bottle nicely. All right, I got a coil. Okay, look at our high quality cooling chamber. Love it. I need 2 of these. Hose in, hose out. All right, got the parts that I didn't have, starting off with a new vacuum pump. Nothing is wrong with my other vacuum pump, but that is a 3 cubic feet per minute pump, and this is a 9 cubic feet per minute pump, so it's faster. It's not gonna pull to like a stronger vacuum, I don't think. It's just gonna go quicker. And when I start frying stuff in the oil, like a lot of vapor and moisture are produced, and I wanna be able to pull that out as quickly as possible, get it down to a low pressure so we actually get the vacuum frying effect. I also got a vacuum gauge, which will show what the pressure is, and a thermometer, both of which are going to get permanently attached to the lid of our frying pot. All right, so I need that to get mounted, and this to get mounted just into the pot. Time to drill some holes. Ah, there we go. Success. Lift that up just a little bit so it's not resting on the bottom. I have several sealed points on here. I've got the hose here, I've got the hose in and out here, I've got the vacuum gauge and the thermometer, and all of those need to be sealed up really well. So I am just going to use some JB Weld to go all the way around the seals on both sides to make sure that they can hold the low pressure that they need to. I don't just have to rely on these O-rings. You know, it's flexible metal. I didn't get exactly the right drill, so it'll just make it all a better seal. Here's our vacuum gauge. Let's see how we do. This lid got pulled down. This lid got pulled down. Our gauge is going up. We are pulling at least quite low pressure. A little failure gauge is not failing yet. Maybe we're not gonna get down to like an amazing vacuum, but that is pretty good. It will definitely work for our purposes, so I am quite happy with the result we're getting. Ha ha! It's all sealed up and holding. This is the thing I realized, I don't have a way to add pressure back in. I might have to just break this plastic off. Yeah. Now I have access to this. And I can just let the air back in. Excellent. That is awesome. I'm very happy with how everything is working so far. And at this point, I think we need to cook in it. All right, got a lot going on this workbench right now. We've got the vacuum fryer over here and the standard fryer over here. We're gonna be frying foods in both to see how they turn out. And this is not like some, wow, look how much better it's gonna turn out in the vacuum fryer. I don't know. I've only kind of done this before one time, and it was a much worse, more ghetto setup. So I'm very excited to see what happens, but I don't know what's going to happen. I'm just gonna get our machines turned on. I'm gonna turn this one pretty low, going for the 275. I'm gonna start with bananas. This one, my thermometer is attached to the lid. Just gonna have it offset like that. There we go. So I've got my thermometer running. It'll tell me as the oil heats up. Time to prep some bananas. Start with a small batch, just a few slices, enough that they can all be spread out. We're gonna have the same amount in this basket approximately. I've got one where the oil is at about 280, and the other one is currently showing 280, so we've got the same fairly low frying temperature. From what I've seen about frying bananas, you want that lower temperature, but this is new territory to me. The important thing is that I'm doing them at the same temperature. Fill that with water and some salt. Cooling system, extraction system, vacuum system, this system. Start with lowering these down in. Here we go, frying bananas. Dropping those down in. Those are no longer nice and spread out. They're all piled on top of each other, but things happen. We're gonna pull a vacuum. Sucked the lid down on. Our vacuum gauge swung right up, so I assume it is pulling, and we do have a little bit of condensed water dripping down into this jar. So I guess things are working. Warm going in, it's cold coming out. That's what I'd hope for. Starting to get some browning. I like that. This one has been holding great at 280, 290. I'm just gonna turn it down a little bit because that's a little higher than we were thinking. This one is holding pretty well at around 275, it seems. We're in a very similar range. I like that. I want to say, sure, right now. This is all very arbitrary. We're just gonna leave the basket out like that right now. Turn off our vacuum, and we are going to break our vacuum seal. Get our pressure back in. Nice and slow like. Ooh, we've got a lot more color on these banana chips. Ooh, those are way crispier feeling. So we have like more of a chip. All right, it's tasting time. That's what matters. We've got our standard fryer. We've got our vacuum fryer. Let's see. Outside, there is a dry skin. I would never call it crispy. There's no to it at all, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. It feels very oily, which, not surprising. The banana flavor is very mild. All right, let's try our vacuum fried one. Definitely crispy. Oh my goodness, that's crispy. Still feels very oily, for the record, like extremely oily, but it absolutely has like a crispy outside skin, bordering on crunchy in places. Oh man. The banana flavor is still very mild, so I don't think that's affected much, but the texture of biting into that is way different. Now, the temperature in this pot was about 15 degrees higher, and I don't know how much difference that made. So I've been turning down the stove and I've left the lid off. I want to try again, just with a slightly lower temperature, lower even than this one. And I really want to test if it's the vacuum making the difference, not the temperature. So we're gonna do another batch.
A little bit lower.
Okay, we're starting off pretty low. It dropped down considerably when I put the mesh basket and bananas in. It was at about 250. It dropped down to 215, but now I've got the stove heating up again. Should get back up to temperature, and I'll try and keep it in that 250 range. Right, we have hit our time. Same time as last time, but this time we were cooking at a much lower temperature. Let our pressure back in. Ooh. So this is the banana chip that was cooked at a much lower temperature. It only barely got up to 250 Fahrenheit, whereas this was at 275, 280, and then before in the vacuum it was at like 290. What do we have for crispiness? Hey, it still snapped. Oh my goodness. That was like crunchy. That is like, yeah, I think that is pretty much the same amount of crispiness as the high temperature one. So, at a lower temperature than in the standard fryer, we got crispy banana bits. Oh man, those are way good. Still very oily. I don't want that false assumption to be out in the air. Still oily, but really good. That's a fantastic texture. Oh man. It's time to try apples. And they float. That's gonna be interesting. Have to keep poking them, maybe flipping them. This one, however, I knew that if things floated, I wouldn't be able to poke them. That's why I got a basket with a lid, so it'll sink all the way down in. Just hold the apples under the oil. Sucked on nicely, and we're gonna add some heat, try and get it back up to that 250 range. And we're there. Let's take our apples out of the standard fryer. We've got a little bit of browning on some edges. Now the temperature on this one varied a little bit. It started at about 230, got up to 250 for most of it, and then it did start getting a little hotter, but only to like 265, so it never got as warm as that one. Our apples look very interesting. They're like translucent. Weird. Well, I would still not call that crispy. Man, that seems to have just soaked up the oil. You can like see right through that practically. The normal fryer ones are actually more translucent. What really matters here, of course, is how they are to eat. This is hot, very flexible, looks very oily. The peel's kind of hard, and the rest of it's very squishy, like a warm pear. Ooh. And, oh, we have a snap a little bit. It's like a very gentle, oily, wet snap, but it's crispy. Not as crispy as the bananas. Bananas have a lot less moisture in them, but that is crispy. The peel also breaks a little bit easier, so definitely more pleasant to eat. However, not really my favorite. I know apple chips as a vacuum fried food, like commercially done, especially overseas, do exist. I don't think this is the way to do them. They're fine, they're very oily. Let's go to something that's supposed to be fried. Potatoes. Taters, precious.
What's taters, precious?
wash this off. So French fries actually do best if you fry them first at a lower temperature, take them out, let them cool down, and then fry them again at a higher temperature. It's called par frying. So I'm going to put the fries in for about 3.5 minutes. Then I'm gonna take them out, let them cool down. While they're cooling down, the oil will be heating up, and I'll cook them again for 3 or 4 minutes at a higher temperature. And here we go. Go fries, go. Look at all that's getting pulled out of that one. The vacuum's having a hard time keeping up. There's a lot of moisture in potatoes. Okay, we're gonna start pulling things out. Let this cool down a little bit while our oil heats up a little bit. And we're gonna break our vacuum over here. Do the same thing with the fries in this. We've let the oil heat up and the fries cool down. Now, neither of these fryers actually goes as high of a temperature as I want. So I'm gonna be starting my stopwatch again and letting them go probably for about 4 minutes. I'll pay attention to the color on this one and see how that one's doing. I worry that the vacuum would be cooler than we want it to be, but we've had good results before with the lower temperature. So we're just gonna see how it turns out. Here we go. Normal fries in a normal fryer. And I'm gonna give that about 4 minutes, but really we're just gonna pay attention to the color. Here we go. There it is. Whew. Oh man, these are already about looking done. It has only been 1.5 minutes. Well, these fries are coming out. They look done. I'm turning off the vacuum. A lot of bubbling still happening right there. Hey, we've got a decent golden color. Good sign. Okay, while the potatoes were cooking, something weird happened. The needle went from this much vacuum to only this much vacuum. I don't really know what caused that yet. Turns out completely inventing a new appliance has some confusing bits. Who knew? Ah, one very salty fry. Share the love, share the love. Fraught with anxiety and distress. Fraught, I tell you. Let's take what looks like one decent French fry from each. They look pretty similar. A little bit of bend test. This is from the standard fryer. Got lots of bendability. Taste test. Some crispiness to the outside, a little bit. Nice mushy potato texture in the middle. Could maybe handle a little more cooking in the middle, but not bad. Overall, while it's hot, that's a decent French fry for a homemade French fry, which is not my favorite way to have them. Vacuum fryer fry. Definitely snappier. Not sure if that's because the outside is crispier or because the inside is still hard. Let's try it. Oh my goodness. That outside is noticeably crispier. Inside is pretty close, about the same texture on the inside, but definitely a crispier outside. No. 5-second rule. Oh yeah. I don't know what was happening with the machine and why it wasn't pulling a good vacuum, but even at the pressure difference it had, noticeable change. Noticeable change. Oh yeah. I love that. All right, well, it turns out using a pressure pot as a vacuum chamber has some downsides. Oil got up around under the seal, and with the negative pressure, it was just getting sucked into the pot. I've cleaned it off. It seems to be holding a vacuum. Hopefully it keeps working. Anyway, we're gonna move on. It's time to try frying some raw bread dough. Now, if I was doing this the right way, I would like make a donut mix. I'm just getting the easiest raw dough I can get my hands on. It's just some Pillsbury biscuits. I'm just going to go for about half a biscuit. I'm gonna roll it into a ball and I'm gonna cook it up and see what that does. That's the whole process. I'm gonna do a few in one and a few in the other. Boy, those are going fast. And away we go. We got vacuum. I, of course, will not have a way to rotate them inside the vacuum fryer. There's nothing I can do about that unless I want to open it, rotate, and close it back up. Ideally, maybe they'll rotate themselves a little bit, but it's just gonna be whatever it is. The other interesting thing, of course, is that in the low pressure, something like bread dough, which is mushy and has a lot of air in it, it might balloon up. And I don't know what that's gonna do as it's cooking or after it's cooking when I let the pressure back in. It might like balloon up, cook, and then when I let the pressure in, it might like drive a ton of oil into the bread. Okay, what have we got going on? We've definitely got cooked bread. I'd say it looks decently cooked all the way through. That's nice, that means I can eat it. Nice crispy outside, slightly dense on the inside, which doesn't surprise me because this is, not a donut bread. It's just biscuit bread. But it's very pleasant. I like that. Is our vacuum dough any different? Raw on the inside. Look at that. That was at a lower temperature too. That is not something I would eat. Okay, so I'm just gonna peel off some of the outside here. The outside is delightfully crispy, but I wouldn't say it's noticeably different. And again, I am not going to bite into the center of this. I do not want the raw dough in there. The outside is crunchier. Yeah, it definitely has the higher crispy texture that I was getting from all the other experiments, but the inside of that, just raw. No good. All right, I've got one more test. It's very important. Chicken wings. Now I'm doing this for two reasons. One, because I like them. Two, because this is something I tried to test the last time I tried making a vacuum cooker. Years and years ago on the King of Random. It worked a little. It seemed like it helped. I gotta redo. I gotta try a real test with the better vacuum cooker. See how this is gonna go. Gotta have a drumstick for a fair test. We have a vacuum. That's still working great. Coming out cold, going in warm. Vacuum's pulling. We should be getting our best result. Chicken is starting to get there. Oh yeah, starting to look brown. And I did nothing to prep these. You can brine them ahead of time. You can brine them with a little bit of baking powder. Is something that can help dry them out to get it crispier. I did nothing. There's not even salt. It's just the straight wing. I will add some salt after I take them out. As it is, unflavored, unspiced, unblanched, undried, nothing. Just wings. All right, let some pressure back in, slowly. Sounds good. Got my wings. They're both hot, so holding them is a little uncomfortable, but it's okay. Standard fryer, vacuum fryer. They look pretty similar, feel fairly similar. Outside on the vacuum fryer maybe feels a little drier. Let's do a test bite. It's delicious. It's chicken, a little bit of crispiness to the outside skin, not a lot. Tastes good. Be happy to eat that. Vacuum fried wing. Okay, I got like half a bite into it. Juices started pouring out so much that I had to stop biting into it. And those juices taste like chicken, salty, delicious goodness. Was it oil from the machine that just got sucked in and tastes like chicken? I don't know, maybe, but it's amazing. Much, much juicier to bite into. Holy cow. Like, I mean, that's not bad to start with. It's already good. You're like, oh yeah, fried chicken wing. But the vacuum fried one, absolutely a crispier skin, absolutely juicier chicken, more flavor, which again might just be salty oil, but it's delicious. Oh my gosh, that was like a friggin' 10 out for not doing any sort of batter or seasoning or anything before frying and only adding salt after. That is like a 10 out of 10 chicken wing. Ah, it's so good. Why is it more tender? I don't even know. Oh my word. Yep. I'm gonna start a restaurant just called Vacuum Wings. It's a stupid name, I don't care. It's gonna make $1 million trillion a year. Oh, great, gotta try the drumettes. Nice, hot, crispy, a little crispy, decently juicy. It's a wing. Happy to eat that wing. So much happier to eat that wing. Why is it so much better? Juice is pouring out of it. A lighter, crispier skin. Oh my goodness. Well, this is it. This is the pinnacle of wing frying. Oh man, it's amazing. It's amazing. So, what else should I try in the vacuum fryer?
As always, a huge thank you shout out to all of our supporters on Patreon. We could not do these videos without you. If you're interested in joining the Patreon supporters, the link for that is in the description.